Hello and welcome to Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness. I'm your host, Jeneé of Jeneé.com. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I'm glad that you found my podcast and I'm glad that you're listening. Since this is your first time, please make sure that if you're listening on SoundCloud that you follow the podcast there. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. Not only does it help me, but it also helps you by giving you alerts and notifications each time a new video is posted so you don't miss out. I want to make sure that you get those updates, especially so that way you can continue to get support and help along your financial journey. So my name is Jeneé. I am an entrepreneur and financial professional, and I teach people how to manage and grow their money so they can afford the life they want to live and have the freedom to pursue what God is calling them to do. So you can also share this podcast either on YouTube or SoundCloud with someone who you know can benefit from this information, and anyone who you may want to, push along the way to do a little bit better financially. Make sure that you share this with them as well. So for today's topic, we're talking about despise not the day of humble beginnings. So if you listen to my previous podcast, it'll sound slightly similar to small wins add up to big rewards. But this is another real-time message like the one that I shared yesterday, because my mentor had posted one of her very first YouTube videos like almost 4 years ago. And it was just amazing to see how much she's evolved since then. She started out as a blogger, talking about natural hair, and now she's this 7-figure entrepreneur, traveling all over the place, speaking everywhere, has, an extensive resume, and I'm just thankful to be mentored by her and also just to be able to see her journey. I did not get connected with her until maybe 2016 and maybe even 2017 or 2016. One of those years, but it wasn't long. So I didn't see her when she first got her start. But it was humbling just to watch from whence she came, and, knowing the track record that she has now is just the sum of all the work that she's been doing and putting in consistently. So it was encouraging to me because, going along this financial journey, or entrepreneurial journey rather, you experience some of the same things. And so if you're somebody who, along your financial journey, you might be dealing with frustration, you might be beating yourself up because you feel like you should be further ahead financially, this broadcast is for you. Why? Because we all deal with frustration when we're in the middle. So it's like when we're first getting started, we're excited because we're starting something new and we have all this energy. But it's like once we have to actually start putting in the work and taking the steps to do the things that we talk about, it gets hard because we have to deal with, the parts of us that are not so great. And then we have to kind of shift that behavior at the same time that we're trying to do something different. So it's a lot to juggle. It's a lot to manage. It's a lot to balance. So I want to share some tips that you can use to help you manage and navigate through this process. So the first one is to stay in your own lane and run your own race. And that's something that we have to remember. Like, everyone is on their own individual journey, and the spirit of comparison will really, really hurt you, because you can't compare yourself to someone else. Your starts are not the same, they're different, and your end is different as well. Even the Bible says that God has an expected end for each and every person, and God is so wise, and he's so intentional about what he does, and he's so unique in what he does. No one person's destiny is the same as someone else. Like, God's too wise for that. So you have to realize that the more you compare yourself to someone else, the more you slow down your progress, because you'll never be able to measure yourself apples to apples against someone else. In the same way, if you try to measure yourself against somebody who's not as far along as you are, that's not a fair comparison, because you don't know what that other person is dealing with. So in the same way, you don't want to compare up, you can't compare down. So it's best not to compare at all. So understand that you are running your own race, so stay in your lane. And that's a humbling thing to hear, and it could be a tough pill to swallow for some people, but it's the God honest truth. It really is. And the more you can embrace the fact that you are only in competition with yourself. And this is what my business partner says. He says, every day I'm trying to outbeat who I was yesterday. And if you keep that as your focus, you'll give yourself some grace to be able to make mistakes. But every day you approach each day that you're going to do it just a little bit better. And it takes pressure off of you too, because you're not worried about people expecting certain things out of you. All that should matter is what you expect from yourself and what God is telling you he expects out of you. You do need to have a standard for your life, absolutely. And so it's important that you know that. Now, pause. This is, I've lost count, about the some odd time that I forgot to do this. Again, I'm still adjusting to this new flow. And if you've been listening for a while, you'll notice that the flow switched up just slightly, because my mentor is teaching us the proper way to come on and interact with people. So pretend that this is the beginning, even though we just went over that first tip. I neglected to mention that this podcast is being sponsored by The Blueprint. The Blueprint is an online course dedicated to helping people prepare financially for home ownership. So you can learn more about The Blueprint by going to bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. That's bit.ly/the blueprint to buying a home. Now I have got to figure out how, and I even wrote it on my paper, and I didn't. I thought I didn't. So that's my bad. But one of these days, like, I used to open up with that from out the gate, and now it's like, with this new flow, I'm dropping the ball on that every single time. It'll get better. Thank you all for bearing with me. So let's go on to number 2. And if you're just tuning in, welcome. This is the Faith, Finance, and Forgiveness podcast. And I am your host, Jeneé of Jeneé.com, entrepreneur and financial professional. And I focus on teaching people how to manage and grow their money so they can afford the life they want to live and have the freedom to pursue the things God is calling them to do. So we're talking about how you shouldn't despise the day of humble beginnings. And so if you're somebody who is, trying to make some changes financially, or you're not in the place that you want to be financially, give yourself some grace. You have to start somewhere. So I'm sharing some tips to help you kind of navigate through this growing process. So the next step, the first one was stay in your own lane and run your race. The second is it's not about how fast, but how long. It's not about how fast, but how long. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. So what I mean by that is it's not about how fast you can hit certain results. While, you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, the thing is, how long can you sustain it after you hit those results? Some people, they focus so much on doing so much so soon that once they hit a certain milestone or accomplish a certain goal, then they drop off and they do nothing else after that. And that's important because you want to go for longevity. You want to go for the long win versus the short wins. My pastor was preaching Sunday about how, shortcuts, God don't like shortcuts. He wants us to go through the process because there are things that we're going to learn along the way that's going to help us once we tap in. That was the series he was talking about. There are some things that we're going to learn along the way that's going to help to sustain us when we do begin to tap in and access the doors that God has placed in front of us. Once those doors begin to open and we get access to walk through them, there's certain character building traits that we need to have in order to sustain the doors that God opens for us. So same way with your finances, realizing that it's not about, how fast you can pay something off or how fast you can buy something like a home or a car, but it's about how long can you actually keep up the behavior to be disciplined with how you make spending decisions? How long can you make the right choices when it comes to how you spend your money? How long can you save to be able to contribute towards your long-term retirement goals? You want to go for longevity. You want to go for sustainability, not just quick wins. And that's important. And then lastly, as long as you're making progress, you'll never be stuck. So that's a very true statement. And it's simple, but very profound because, you want to, and it's just human nature. Like you want to skip ahead, like you want to get to the end. You see so clearly what it is you want, whether it's that new house, whether it's a new car, whether it's, moving to a new city or state or a country, or going on a lavish vacation. You can see it so clearly, but you feel like it's just taking too long. And you know that you're saving, but it's like the balance in your bank account isn't growing fast enough. So for it, if you're somebody who's in that situation, what I have to say to you is that as long as you're making progress, you'll never be stuck. So while it may seem like you're in the same place because you're growing incrementally and not quickly, you're not stuck. You're making progress. And so all progress is good progress, especially if it's progress where you're moving forward. That's the main thing. You'll enjoy and you'll appreciate that vacation that much better because of the fact that you took your hard-earned money and you was disciplined enough to set it aside. You were focused and made the right decisions so that way you wouldn't spend your money irresponsibly. And now you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. That stuff matters. And so if you're somebody who, you are, again, in this situation where, you're frustrated with yourself and you're not really, happy with where you are, then again, you have your goal in mind and what you're striving for. And if you don't have a clear plan that is something you can measure and something you can actually chart out on paper and attach numbers to it, then you should have a system in place to do that. And I can share where you can find something to help you. But once you have your target in place, it's just taking small steps every day that'll get you closer towards achieving your goal. That's it. And so once you rest in the fact that, all of these things that I've shared today is basically meant to give you peace along the way. Once you can rest in the truth of the information that I shared today, then you'll be able to not just embrace where you are, but actually enjoy where you are and make the most of it. Again, like I shared yesterday, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And yes, I get it. It's hard. Whether it's finances or business, it is not easy. It is not easy, but it is worth it. So just to recap, again, for those of you who are in a situation where, you're not seeing the results as quickly as you would like to, and you're dealing with frustration financially because you wish you could be further ahead, here are some tips to help you navigate through the middle. So the first is, number one, to realize that you need to stay in your own lane and run your own race. Don't compare. The second is, it's not about how fast you can hit your results, but how long you can actually maintain them once your goal is achieved. So we're not going for just quick wins, but we're going for longevity and sustainability. And then lastly, as long as you're making progress, you'll never be stuck. And that's the main thing. So if you're somebody who is dealing with this and you need some tools because you realize that you're frustrated with your finances, but you don't necessarily have a plan in place to change your situation, visit my website, jeneem.com. That's JENEEM.com. What I recommend is that you start with a budget, because a budget is the tool that's going to help you to reach your goals. So I recommend starting with that. So if you go to my website, again, jeneem.com, that's JENEEM.com, and scroll to the middle of the page, there's an option to start using a budget. And it's a tutorial basically where I walk you through how to build a budget. And it's based on your lifestyle. And so you can begin to put on paper, how much it's going to take to achieve your goals. Because if you don't have something to measure against what you're actually striving for, then that can delay your process as well. So you want to make sure that you have a written plan financially where you're able to determine how long it's going to take to reach whatever goal that you have in place. So there's that. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you're not following the podcast on SoundCloud, make sure you hit the follow button. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And also drop me a comment down below on what resonated with you. What are some things you're dealing with in your financial journey? If there are certain topics that you'd like me to touch on. This podcast is really about building people first and finances second. So I realize that we do need the practical knowledge and information about how to manage finances. But what I've learned in studying financial psychology is if we don't deal with the core of who we are, our character, how we think, how we behave, then it'll be really hard to try to teach people new concepts on top of a shaky foundation. So that's why, the last few podcasts have been on, how to help you navigate through financial difficulty or frustration, or just trying to do better. How do you navigate through that process? Because if I can't build you up enough to believe that you can live a better life financially, I can teach you everything you want to know about how to manage money, how to build wealth, and how to do this and that, but it won't help you if you won't be in the right posture to receive it. So that's why we deal with a lot of lifestyle issues, because it's meant to help build your faith so you can be better with your finances. And, forgiveness is part of the title of the podcast too, because there's a healing process that needs to happen, a healing in our minds mentally, healing in our actions and behaviors and where those things stem from. And we need to be freed from those things, because if we're not, it'll continue to keep us bound and to slow us down. So I hope you have enjoyed the podcast today. Again, if you're not following on SoundCloud, please make sure that you do that. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, please make sure that you do that, and drop a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you and interact with you. And thank you all again for tuning in, and I look forward to talking with you on the next podcast. Take care.